With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the AgNet News Hour. Coming up later, an emergency proclamation for San Joaquin Valley tomato growers. We'll have more on that. Our top story today, though, the Biden-Harris administration hosted a Rural Communities in Action event at the White House Tuesday to highlight how the administration is investing in rural communities. We have comments from Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack.
Indeed, we are announcing $671.4 million of resources in 47 projects across 23 states. It's primarily in two categories, water and wastewater disposal systems. We know how important and significant that is. I was mayor of a small town for 5 years. I became mayor in part because our mayor was murdered by a citizen who was upset over the fact that the sewer system in our town did not work. He had raw sewage come up into his basement every time it rained, and he took matters into his own hands, tragically. So I understand and appreciate the significance of this. So when we invest $118.5 million in 37 projects, I know that that creates the opportunity for a more stable and secure community, and I think it creates the opportunity to expand economic opportunity because you have the infrastructure to support new job opportunities. We're also investing $552.9 million in electric infrastructure. Reliable electricity, obviously critically important to the quality of life and the economic opportunity in small communities. 10 projects will receive the benefit of those resources, and it's a combination of grants and loans that we put forward. I'm glad that Nira introduced the notion of the Rural Partnership Network. Here's the reality. There are a lot of communities in the country that understand and appreciate how to play this game and have applied successfully for programs like the ones I just announced. But there are also places of extreme and persistent poverty that have not been successful, do not understand and appreciate what they need to do to be able to get resources, and have often felt left out and left behind. This administration has made a serious commitment to those areas of persistent poverty, and the Rural Partnership Network is one way we are doing that, by essentially putting people on the ground in those 36 communities across the United States, those 10 states, and Puerto Rico. People that are actually living, working, and focused on that particular area, working with community leaders to identify projects, and then working through the rural desk officers in all of the domestic focused departments of government to make sure that they succeed. And here's the news. The $1 million that's going to Puerto Rico is designed in part to pay for and to encourage financial and technical assistance so that communities within Puerto Rico will be able to understand and appreciate how to access the various programs that we have at USDA, the Department of Transportation may have, EPA may have, the domestic operations. It's going to, I think, help focus on about 15 projects and 15 grants. It may be a housing program. It may be a community facility opportunity that communities are interested in. The application period for this $1 billion in Puerto Rico starts May 14th and ends on June 28th. So this is just an example of how we're trying to provide the resources on the ground to make a difference. Now here's the news. And this is, I think, really, really important. When I talk about a persistently poor area, I'm talking about a county or an area of this country where the poverty rate has been over 20% for 30 years or more, consistently and consecutively. You all know where those places are. Maybe some of you come from some of those places. We have a rural economy at a glance document that we put out every year at USDA, in which we sort of determine what the economic health of rural places might be. For the first time in quite a while, this year's edition of the Rural Economy at a Glance indicated that 52 counties out of roughly 260 counties who have been designated as persistently poor, again, 20% poverty for 30 years or more, are now out of that category. And for the first time in quite a while, the rural economy has started to grow. That's also something worth a clap or two. And the challenge, of course, is to keep the momentum, to keep building on this. And you'll be hearing from a great champion of rural America, Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow, who is leading the effort in the Senate to create the next iteration of our Farm Bill. And she will talk, no doubt, about the importance of some of these programs, the Reconnect program, which is broadband, the opportunity for RPN to be sort of formalized into law so that we continue to do this. It's not just one administration who comes up with this. It's every administration that needs to do it. No doubt we'll mention the need for us to continue to invest in health care access and also housing, which is a critical issue. Now, all of that's great. And all of you are here as champions, I suspect, for one or more of those areas. The problem with our thinking about this is that we're losing sight of what we really need to focus on. If you want to build quality of life, if you want to grow the economy in a place where 15% of America's population lives and represents 75% of the land mass of the United States, if you want to give those families at that coffee table that Neera talked about the opportunity to make the case that their children and grandchildren can in fact stay and prosper, you got to focus on creating economic opportunity.
We will have more from Secretary Vilsack later in this show. You're listening to AgNet News Hour. In today's National Spotlight, a new model takes a deeper look at corn disease and is ready for use. David Geiger has this report.
A new tool helps farmers track tar spot and researchers learn more about the disease. Allison Robertson, an Iowa State University Extension plant pathology expert, says it was developed by Damian Smith with the University of Wisconsin as part of the National Predictive Modeling Tool Initiative.
He did all the math behind it, came up with the model, and then plugged it into this app called Tar Spotter.
With 10 states working on disease prediction tools, this is the first one released. Robertson also helped to build Tar Spotter. She says it's easy to use. First, you put in your field by GPS location.
It then asks you, what growth stage your crop is at, have you sprayed a fungicide or not, a couple of other questions, I think, and then you just push run the model, and it'll run the model, and what it'll tell you is at that specific location, what is your risk of tar spot developing? Based
on that, you can make the decision on if the corn crop needs a fungicide application. Additionally, they've learned better information from this new model. There's been suspicion that tar spot is based on moisture.
I mean, this is a fungus, right? So we need moisture for that fungus to produce its spores, and those spores, when they land on a leaf, they need moisture to germinate and infect the leaf. But what we've learned from the model is that temperature is crucial for the development of this disease. Relative humidity and moisture are still important, but what's really driving the disease is temperature.
Her initial estimates are the ideal temperature is 68 to 75 degrees, but more information is needed. Robertson says having more people use the app will help her solidify that temperature range and ultimately allow farmers to better handle tar spot.
The more the model gets used and the more feedback we get about the model, the more we can improve that model. So, yes, we're always looking for feedback about the model.
Funding for the research and the app comes from Congress, and Robertson and her colleagues are working on 4 crops at the moment.
Now that we've got this tar spotter as a base, we're going to be adding all sorts of diseases to that app now. And hopefully there'll be a place then where farmers can go and they can just predict what these diseases are going to be like.
You can find the app by searching Tar Spotter online. It's free and will be hosted on the University of Wisconsin website. I'm David Geiger reporting.
That's today's National Spotlight. Now here's the livestock report. USDA's inaugural look at conditions from our nation's pasture and rangelands indicates a trend not seen in several years. Rodbain reports.
The first USDA National Pasture and Rangeland Condition Report for this growing season indicates mostly good news to start the year.
Good to excellent ratings nationally coming in at 46%. That is a 13 percentage point improvement from the same time a year ago. In other words, this time a year ago, we were at just 33% good to excellent. Meanwhile, very poor to poor ratings nationally, 25%. That is down from a year ago when we sat sat at 37%, very poor to poor.
USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey notes the significance of this first pasture and rangeland condition report of this growing season.
This is our best start to the growing season in terms of pasture and rangeland conditions since the spring of 2020.
Yet, there is a caveat to this bit of data.
We did have higher conditions to start the year each year from 2015 to 2020. So we've had kind of a low bar set in 2021, 2022, and 2023. We've recovered almost to the point of what we saw back in the mid to late 2010s.
This is reflected in state pasture and rangeland condition ratings to start May, featuring notable good to excellent ratings within regions.
In the West, California actually leads. 95% of the rangeland and pasture is rated good to excellent. We have a couple of states at 70% on the Great Plains. That is Nebraska and South Dakota. Those numbers at or above 70% extend into the lower Midwest and include states like Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. Several states in the Southeast.
Despite the vast coverage of good to excellent pasture and rangeland conditions, there are some areas of concern as of the start of the month.
New Mexico and the southern Great Plains still showing some drought impacts that some of those go back quite a ways. Some are more short term. In Florida, where we're still in the midst of the dry season, it has been unusually dry. So we are starting off the year there. 41% of the pastures rated very poor to poor.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. We will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. Coming up in a few moments, we'll have today's This Land of Ours report, but first, more of the day's agriculture news. And with today's AgNet West headlines, here's Brian German.
Emergency proclamations in the San Joaquin Valley are giving tomato growers a chance to protect their crops from beet leafhopper infestations. Fresno, Kern, Kings, and now Stanislaus counties have all declared emergencies that will enable the use of neonicotinoids as allowed under DPR regulations that went into effect this year. Fresno County Ag Commissioner Melissa Cregan explained how they're implementing the emergency declaration.
The proclamation is valid for 60 days unless the board would then have to come back and take action to extend the proclamation further. And so, that's really what we're looking at is a 60-day time frame. That, of course, could go further if it needed to. So we're looking, sort of definitely on the west side of Fresno County. And, this pest can, depending upon, winds and other factors, the pest can really move across large portions. However, there is sort of a general migration. And so we're really looking at this point to limit it onto the west side of Fresno County. Of course, should we see, further migration and need to expand that area, we certainly can do that. However, at this point, we're trying to keep, in the most reasonable geographic area that we can, because we want to make sure that we maintain the spirit of these regulations, but yet still, make sure that we're giving farmers tools that they need to deal with, these critical needs that there really aren't any alternatives for.
More than $22 million to help support socially disadvantaged and veteran farmers and ranchers is being made available through the U.S. Department of Agriculture's 2501 program. Approximately $22.3 million will be going to community-based and nonprofit organizations, institutions of higher education, and tribal entities that help socially disadvantaged and veteran producers own and operate successful farms. Administered by USDA's Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement, the program's issued over 615 grants totaling more than $194 million since 2010. Recipients can use the funding for education, training, farming demonstrations, and conferences on farming and agribusiness. The grant funding is also used to help increase access to USDA's programs and services. The deadline to submit an application for the 2501 program is Friday, July 5th. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has issued a new rule regarding pre-harvest agricultural water for certain produce under the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule. Instead of previous microbial testing, farms will now need to conduct assessments to identify and manage potential hazards in their water systems. This includes evaluating factors like water source, distribution methods, crop susceptibility, and environmental conditions. Farms must take corrective actions if hazards are found with varying timelines depending on the risk level. Supervisory review of these assessments is required, although exemptions are available for farms meeting certain water quality criteria. Compliance deadlines, which range from 9 to 33 months after the rule's effective date, will vary based on business size. FDA is encouraging collaboration with industry and is providing educational resources to support compliance. The UC Organic Agriculture Institute has released the initial findings from its statewide needs assessment project. Postdoctoral researcher with the Institute, Shreya Rangarajan, said there were a few things they aimed to achieve with the survey.
We wanted to expand the sample size within California specifically and wanted to understand how the experiences of different agriculturists and other industry partners throughout the state varied. What I mean by that is we wanted to make sure we were hitting every crop group. We wanted to understand the experiences that input suppliers, retailers, processors, basically trying to target the whole value chain as well as what extension specialists, pest control advisors, what every person's experience was to develop a more holistic understanding of the system. Another thing we were interested in is understanding regional variations, if there were any, and understanding what knowledge networks look like, because something that has been coming up repeatedly is that there isn't a consolidated source of information for organic growers. And, people are either tapping into their own networks or looking up online sources, and that varies a whole lot depending on how well connected that particular person is. So we were essentially trying to see what that looked like, and that's still a work in progress. I want to say this at the outset, is that the needs assessment, there is still work being done on that front. It's not still complete.
UC Agriculture and Natural Resources is hosting the California Date Palm Workshop next week in Indio. The workshop will take place from 8 to noon on Wednesday, May 22nd at the Coachella Valley History Museum. The topics of discussion will include the past, present, and future of integrated pest management and dates, as well as updates on irrigation management and date fertilization research. Professor of Extension and Biological Control Mark Hoddle will also give an update on the South American palm weevil invasion in Southern California. After the morning break, presentations will highlight management of mite pests, date palm research at the University of Arizona, and pollen management and pollination. CCA, California DPR, and Arizona Department of Ag CEU credits are pending for the event. More information about the workshop is available on the upcoming events page at agnetwest.com. I'm Brian German for AgNet West Radio Network.
As we mentioned at the top of the show, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack spoke at the White House Rural Communities in Action event Tuesday. We have the conclusion of his comments now.
It's all well and good to talk about infrastructure. It's all well and good to talk about housing, but those are essentially results of an area that either has or doesn't have proper economic development. And one of the key problems has been the way in which we deal with agriculture in this country. In the 1970s, we made the decision as a country to move away from a supply management system of agriculture where farmers did pretty well and small and mid-sized farming operations could stay in business, to a different model, a model that basically encouraged farmers to plant fence row to fence row, produce as much as you possibly can. Well, the problem with that theory and that approach is that it encourages larger and larger and larger farming operations, which means that you have fewer and fewer and fewer farming operations, which means that you have fewer and fewer farm families, which means you have fewer and fewer children in your schools, so they have to merge. You have fewer customers in your small town businesses that are owned and operated by folks who live, work, and raise their families there. You have fewer patients at the hospital, so you don't have a hospital, you got a clinic. I want you to know that since 1981, when Bob Berglund, who was a Secretary of Agriculture for Minnesota, raised concerns about this, we've lost 544,970 farms. Now, to give you a sense of how many farms that is, that's every farm today in North Dakota and South Dakota, and in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and in Illinois and Iowa, and in Nebraska and Colorado, and in Missouri and Oklahoma. We lost 151 million acres of land that was in farming that's no longer in farming today. It's concreted over. That's the landmass of Florida and Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Maryland, and most of Virginia. So if you want to know why we've had a challenge affording housing and having access to health care, or being able to have decent water systems or economic opportunity, it's because we haven't created an environment in which small and mid-sized farming operations can survive and thrive in addition to large-scale production agriculture until now. This administration understood this, and because of the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act and creative use of the tools that we have at USDA, we have created an entrepreneurial opportunity. And before you leave here today, you're going to get one of these that sort of outlines the details of this. But essentially, it's two components. It's climate smart agriculture and it's local and regional food systems. It's climate smart agriculture, paying farmers to embrace climate smart practices, allowing them to measure and monitor the climate result and get paid for it in terms of value-added proposition for their products, and also get paid by those who need offsets for their own carbon footprint, paying farmers to sequester carbon. It's a new commodity. It's the conversion of agricultural waste into a new industry called sustainable aviation fuel, which is a brand new commodity, one of 40,000 products that can be made from agricultural waste that was a problem and now can become a commodity and a new economic opportunity and a job creator in rural places. It's about renewable energy that creates not the opportunity just for the farmer to reduce their energy costs, but to pool excess energy that they're able to create with other farmers and allow their REC or the local municipal utility to embrace renewable energy with resources under the Inflation Reduction Act and create an energy economy. Now, instead of just one income source, this farm family now has 4 or 5 new income sources. And if you have a local and regional food system that pays that farmer a better deal, you go to the grocery store and you put your dollar on the counter, farmer gets about 20 cents on average of that food dollar. When you buy something at a local and regional food opportunity, a farmer's market or a farm to school program, that farmer gets 50 to 75 cents of every food dollar. It's a better deal. And now there are nearly $20 billion being invested in this new system. And you all can be supporters of and advocates for this system in your communities, in your counties, in your cities, in your states, in your region. You can essentially say there is no reason why we have to lose 544,970 farms in a lifetime. There's no reason for that conversation to take place at that coffee table. It can be a different conversation if we all basically understand the power of this idea of creating multiple streams of income for that farm family that in turn creates an entire supply chain for that sustainable aviation fuel, for those ecosystem service markets, for that renewable energy, for that local and regional food system that also creates jobs. Now you've got people, and people can support schools, and people can support Main Street businesses, and people can support health care. That's the president's vision. I'm excited about this because it's working. And we need to make sure that we got people out there talking about this so that there's an awareness and appreciation for it. Now, Debbie Stabenow's Farm Bill basically supports many of the programs that we have instituted in this new vision. So if you want more details about this after you've seen it, our YouTube channel at USDA can give you a little whiteboard presentation. You can see me talk over and over and over again. There's the 3-minute version, and then there's the long 12-minute version. The point of this is, the point, frankly, is this, and I'll finish with this. Here's why this is really important. Beyond the obvious, beyond the fact that these people who live, work, and raise their families in rural communities are good people and they deserve economic opportunity, beyond the fact that it's 75% of the land mass of the United States and we need to take better use of it, beyond the fact that we want these small communities to thrive, it's about national security. Because the reality is that a disproportionate number of young people go into the military from those small towns. A disproportionate number, in some cases twice the percentage. In other words, if it's 15% of America's population, it could be 30% of our military. If we continue to squeeze and continue to move people off the farm and out of those small towns, you're squeezing the population of people willing to serve our country. It's an important opportunity for us. It's a unique opportunity. And I think this is an administration who literally has invested in over 10,000 investments in this system that I just talked about. I'm not exaggerating. Over 10,000. You say, well, where are they? Every place you see a shovel in the ground, every place you see a piece of equipment creating a new road or putting broadband in, that's all of this. Everywhere you see farmers embracing climate smart agriculture, that's all of this. Everywhere you see your rural utilities saying it's time to transition and embrace renewable sources, that's this. Every time you see a farm to school program, a farmer's market, an opportunity for your local grocery store to advocate for local producers or your local restaurant purchasing, that's what this is. It's everywhere. And we just need to make sure people are aware of it. All right? That's your job. That's your challenge. You take this word and you start spreading it. Because if you do, I can guarantee you the persistent poverty count will come down. I can guarantee you the population will increase. I can guarantee you that we can bring prosperity back to rural places. And I can guarantee you that we'll always have enough young men and women willing to protect us.
This is the AgNet News Hour. We will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. For today's featured interview, I'm talking with Dana Ghirardelli of the Sonoma County Farm Bureau. So Dana, there has been some efforts by animal rights groups in Sonoma County to, do away with some of our family farms. Can you tell me a little bit about what they're pushing?
Sure. So what they're pushing right now is a citizen petition that they've circulated and got certified to be put on the ballot in November, which seeks to eliminate concentrated animal feeding operations. And in doing so, they are saying that they are ending factory farms, put quotes around that term, and they are equating the US EPA's definition of a concentrated animal feeding operation with factory farms. So the farms that they are considering or that they feel fall in this category are family farms.
Just, that term, factory farms, it's become such a buzzword for some of these organizations. What does, again, using the air quotes here, but the concentrated feeding, whatever that wordage was,
Yes.
What does that actually mean? If I were to drive by one of these locations, what would I actually see there?
You wouldn't think twice. You wouldn't. I mean, I say that, but yet it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, these farms we have here, majority of them are, like, if we talk about the dairies, they are organic. So they utilize pasture as a main part of their management and how they produce their product. For the poultry operations, they exceed the Prop 2 and Prop 12, I should say most recently Prop 12 regulations. All of the farms are third-party certified or verified for some type of animal welfare program. So you, having been in a bit of agriculture, would probably not look at any of these farms and think that they would fall into the category.
And you mentioned before that these are family farms, right? These are not big corporately owned, or if it is, it's a family corporation, which I think a lot of people don't understand either. But again, they are family farms.
Right, majority are family farms. There may be one group or farms that might fall under a corporate structure, but for the most part, they are locally owned or locally operated, I should say, much like the family farms. But absolutely, our food shed here in Sonoma County is very much family farms.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, and if you don't, that's perfectly okay. But the group that started this, are they from Sonoma County, or are they part of a larger group that's not? But there are groups that are go around to counties and look for things that they can, force change in. Is it something like that, or was it a local group that actually had been there for a while, for a few years and had legitimate issues?
No, funny you bring that up. It is the first. So the the core group that this is coming from is called Direct Action Everywhere. They have been in our county since 2017 to a certain degree. I'm just going to say tormenting our local poultry industry. We've had a lot of their people who have come in for protests, who have trespassed onto farms, they're constantly flying drones over farms here, creating a narrative that works for them to try and push their ideals. And this group comes out of Berkeley, California, which is in the Bay Area, but not in Sonoma County or, technically near Sonoma County. So to your point, yes, these are people coming in from out of the area. And they've chosen, I believe, Sonoma County because we are a proficient and sustainable food production county, and it's close to Berkeley. And they've had their points of contention with our local farming industry, and I think this is just another way for them to try and attack the good that we do, in that they just simply don't agree with it.
One thing that I hear frequently when I talk with leaders and experts in other parts of the nation, because I do report around the nation. I'm a Californian, but my reports go around the nation. And they always say, once it happens in California, we really pay attention because we know it's going to happen here. And one thing that I've heard is that groups like this will kind of practice in California counties like Sonoma to see which of their tactics work and how they can get things pushed through legislation. And then they will take it elsewhere across the nation. So this is something that I know that agricultural industry people around the nation are actually, are paying attention to in Sonoma County. As you have been dealing with this, like you said, for a number of years, and, just in your role in agriculture, what would you say to people who are watching it from your position, other agriculture industry folks who are watching this from other parts of the nation and seeing what's going on in Sonoma? What would you tell them?
Well, I've talked to actually a lot of organizations and people from around the nation in regards to this very issue, and they are not wrong to be concerned depending on what happens here. We feel very confidently that this is a stepping stone, that, to your point, they are seeking out to see, kind of throw something against the wall and see what sticks, because if they can make it happen here, it's going to take off. So what we've really been telling people is, pay attention, support us in whatever way you can, not just by endorsing, but if there's any financial contributions that can be offered, because we know that this is going to be an at least $1.65 million effort to combat as a full wage campaign. And we know we have to stay steadfast with our Sonoma County voters here because they get to make the decision. But we're very aware that we are just kind of the guinea pig right now. So it is really important that we all stand together on this and we fight this together. But again, we have to focus on our Sonoma County neighbors and make sure that they fully understand the implications of what this could do if it passes.
And that's what I wanted to ask about next was, ultimately this goes to the voters, much like Prop 12 did, much like 2 did. Ultimately, this goes to the voters. And there are a lot of non-ag voters, even in Sonoma County, which is, has strong agriculture in it. But what do you want them to understand about this?
Well, I mean, they need to understand that this is going to force family farms out of business, and it's going to decrease our local food supply. And, this is an area where people are very excited for our local food shed, and that will change tremendously. It's going to increase food costs to be able to bring in some of these products that now are going to be fewer and farther from our reach. We're going to be bringing food in from outside the area. On top of that, it's going to cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. Within this ordinance, they have charged the county with enforcing this while also having to retrain any employees displaced from a farm on account of this poor legislation or policy making or ordinance, if you will. So there's a level of job loss. There's financial implications on the county, not just on the farms, but also the greater economic effect and the direct effect on the county's budget for sake of enforcement and employment oversight.
I've asked you, what do you want people around the nation to know? What do you want people in Sonoma County to know? If you were to speak one-on-one with one of these animal rights activists, somebody from this group, what would you want them to know? I know that's a tricky question.
Tricky question. At the end of the day, this is directly affecting people's livelihoods. And it seems as though they have no shame, and perhaps they should redirect their attention elsewhere. This also is a direct threat on a consumer's right to choose. And so what's unfortunate is that while they have their own ideals and beliefs and what they do and don't like, in their quest to get others to conform to their ways, if you will, they're creating a major threat on our food supply, and especially our local source for food.
And is there anything else that you'd like for our listeners to know?
I just encourage everybody to, watch what happens here. We do have a website. It's rather lengthy, but it's called Sonoma County Family Farmers Alliance.com. We'll be making that far more robust as we move through the process. Would also, shamelessly like to ask for endorsements and financial contributions to help us make sure that we not only beat this, but we beat this handily. It's important that we send a message.
Thank you again to Dana Ghirardelli from the Sonoma County Farm Bureau. You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. Now for more news. World and U.S. cotton supplies are projected to grow this year. Gary Crawford has more.
If the USDA's forecasts for cotton production this year turn out to come true, folks in the cotton business are going to be dealing with
a lot of cotton in the world and in the U.S.
USDA Outlook Chairman Mark Jekanowski told us
global cotton production expected to be up about 5.4 million bales. U.S. cotton production expected to be up 3.9 million bales year over year.
Or a possible increase in U.S. production of about 30%. Mark says some of that extra cotton will go for more domestic mill use. U.S. cotton exports could increase, but not enough to prevent a buildup in stocks and a drop down in prices.
So our new season cotton price forecast is down 2 cents per pound, down at 74 cents per pound, down from 76 cents this current crop year.
Or about 2.5% below this current year. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
And USDA Chief Meteorologist Mark Brusberg with a report on the rapid pace of spring wheat progress.
The big winner in terms of planting progress has been spring wheat. 61% of the spring wheat has been planted, as of this week. It was 47% last week. Last year at this time, it was only 35%. And on average, we're looking at 48%. So spring wheat is, over 10 points ahead of the average pace. And the crop has emerged on 25% of the acreage versus 18% on average. So they're off to a good start.
Alabama is now the second state in the nation to ban the sale of cultured meat. Governor Kay Ivey signed SB 23 into law, making the manufacture, sale, or distribution of food products produced from cultured animal cells a Class C misdemeanor as of October 1st. According to the bill, civil penalties could range from $100 for a Class 2 violation up to $10,000 for a Class 5 violation for food sales establishments that violate the provisions of the bill. However, Feedstuffs says the legislation does not prevent any federal institution of higher education or person who's partnered with a government entity or higher educational institution from conducting research in Alabama regarding the production of cultivated food products. Alabama's ban follows Florida's legal precedent taken earlier this month. That's today's top agriculture news. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West online at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find our broadcast team of Brian German and Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.